South Africa's lowest paid workers are expected to get minimum wage that's above inflation in the coming years. The National Minimum Wage Commission says the proposed adjustment should be in line with CPI. Joining us to unpack this story this morning is former Statistician-General Dr. Pali Lehohla and Labour lawyer Michael Bagram. To both of our guests, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Dr. Lehohla, can I kick off the conversation with you this morning and ask you whether this is a good news story?
Well, as a former statistician, or as a statistician-general, I wouldn't say it's a good story or a bad story. I would just say, well, it's a policy response to the facts. But now that I'm in the public domain, I say, yes, it's a good story, but it's a half-good story. Why do I say so? The lowly paid, that is the domestic work, experience inflation that is driven basically by basic needs such as transport, food, and basic needs like clothing, which are far much higher in the basket than the inflation as an average number. So it's half a good story. The adjustment has to be based on the inflation rate that affects that layer of population, which is basically earning less but have very high exposure, or rather exposure to high inflation levels, particularly when it comes to metals, food inflation, and transport.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, it's very interesting that the National Minimum Wage Commission had been planning to say that every worker must earn enough to maintain a decent standard of living. But on Monday, when it gazetted a new medium-term target for minimum wage, it now says every worker should, let me just get the right wording here. Yeah, so that must earn enough to maintain a decent standard of living is now replaced with should. Does this, give some sort of leeway to employers as well insofar as implementation is concerned, do you think?
It does, but it doesn't go far enough, and I'm very unhappy, extremely unhappy with what has taken place here. The national minimum wage itself is destructive, and I'll explain why. We all want to earn more, and I understand that, and I applaud that. The problem is that it's not business as usual in South Africa. We have almost 40% unemployment. Those that are entering the market, it's almost 70% unemployment. Those with no skills and no CV, you can imagine. There are whole villages that are people have got no employment. So, in fact, the real minimum wage in South Africa today is 0 rand per hour. Just put that in your pipe and smoke it, because at the end of the day, employers, and I deal with literally hundreds of small businesses on a weekly basis, they are looking to cut down their staffing because it's costing them too much. They're saying it's cheaper to outsource, it's cheaper to mechanize, computerize, bring in goods from elsewhere, no beneficiation. The whole ambit is pushing us. We've also got the fourth industrial revolution around the corner. It's already touched many industries, and they're saying, do we need staff? Now, the whole idea over here is that we need to employ more people. In the latest SONA from the president, we see that he said it's not government that creates jobs, it's the small business sector. Now, when you go to the small business sector and you speak to people, in particular in the previously disadvantaged areas, and I speak to people all day in spaza shops. Yesterday I spoke to a group of spaza shop owners, and they're telling me they can't afford the minimum wage. If people don't want to have a job, well, that's fine. Then they'll find someone else. And even trade unions, to a large degree, are holding back because they don't want to cause more retrenchment. Now what we've got is this new government gazette that has been put out, and although they're saying that there is a little bit of leeway, they're saying, and I must quote from it because it's sad, all wage-earning workers should earn a wage sufficient to maintain a decent standard of living. Now, of course, we all agree. That's motherhood and apple pie. We all agree with that. But what happens if the business says, well, we can't, we'd rather not have you here? That's bad. And we are competing with the rest of the world, where some of the jurisdictions can manufacture a set of jeans at half the price that we can manufacture it, and they can land it in South Africa less than what it will cost us to manufacture. So to manufacture a pair of jeans now in the shadow of Table Mountain is just impossible. So what are we doing to the economy? We look like we're slowly destroying it, and I'm very unhappy with this, very.
Dr. Lehohla, what's your response to what Michael has had to say?
Well, the facts that Michael is putting across are true in terms of the manifestation. But basically, we are not answering the question. The question is there must be decent life. And if decent life cannot be achieved, the country then is teetering on the brink. So we are actually playing, but his arguments are not facing the fact that there's something fundamentally wrong in the way we have run the economy, which should necessarily provide a decent life. Otherwise, what he's suggesting is a race to the bottom. I mean, if people earn things that cannot sustain their own lives, cannot take their children to school and so on, then that's not life. So there's something fundamentally wrong. It's not that minimum wage is wrong. It's something that is fundamentally wrong in terms of how we have structured our own economy. Corruption, the infrastructure is breaking. So these are the things that we have to address in order to address the issue of decent life. Decent life is a condition for the future, for everybody. And so stating that there has to be a minimum wage to achieve that is the correct thing to do. But that is conditioned on a decent economy. At the moment, there is no economy.
I mean, it sounds like damned if you do, damned if you don't. And the indicator is the response, right? Employers say they're not able to afford this increase. Unions say the increase is too low. Michael?
Well, I mean, oh, sorry.
Oh, go
Mike,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying that the system has pitted employers against employees and doesn't provide a solution. And the solution is really to fix the economy, not to fight the minimum wage. Because when you fix the economy, then the minimum wage is an automatic outcome of that. And the decent life is an outcome of that.
Right.
The economy is broken completely.
So the minimum wage, you'd say, Michael, is almost like a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, given what
Absolutely.
Dr. Lehohla said.
Oh. The former Statistician-General is absolutely correct. The system is broken. We need to go back to the free market. We know that the free market is the only thing that actually works. I mean, the president effectively said that the government does not create jobs. The government is supposed to create an environment to enable businesses to create jobs. Now, world over, economists are telling us that the jobs being created today are in small business. So we need to look at the system again, and I respect what the Statistician-General is saying, is that we need to look at this very carefully and say it can't be business as usual. Because there are thousands and thousands of people out of job who are absolutely capable. South Africans are capable, industrious, and they want to work. But they can't for the life of them. They cannot get into jobs. And what we're doing is government is acting as a handbrake. I mean, the current governing party is acting as a handbrake to job creation. It's an impossible situation. And when you actually face people who have been working for 20 years, been retrenched, and can find nothing, absolutely nothing, it's heartbreaking. And people are saying, I can't take you in because I can't afford that wage. And the employee is saying, well, take me in anyway. Give me a chance, see what I can do. I'll earn half that or 3/4 of the minimum wage. The Minister of Labour, Employment and Labour, Mr. Nkezi, is telling us, oh, they can apply for an exemption. Well, the exemption's only 10%. So if you've got to pay someone 23 Rand, what is that? It's, 3 Rand discount. I mean, that's impossible. It's an impossible situation. So we need to get back to the drawing board. We need to fix this economy. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be a hard road to travel, but it has to be done, and it won't be done this year because we're now all waiting for this magic election to come up, and it certainly won't be done by the governing party because they are invested in the system. When the trade unions are calling the shots, you've got a real problem because they are interested only in those that have got work. So the trade unions represent those that are going to benefit from legislation of this nature. But who is speaking up for the unemployed? And that group of unemployed now, which is over 11 million people, that group is going to affect all of us. You, me, and every single person watching today. They're all going to be affected by that group because that group's not going to stand still and say, oh, well, we're unemployed, so we'll just wait. That doesn't happen in the real world, in society today. We've got a big problem, and we're standing on that volcano. The volcano is very similar to what the systems that we saw that caused the Arab Spring a few years back. And we don't want that in South Africa. We've got good people that want to work. Let's get them back working. There was a wonderful saying in Britain a few years back, Labour isn't working. Well, it isn't working. And that's the problem. We've got to get Labour back to work. And they need that work desperately now. It's not a situation where we can work through this over the next 20 years. It's not acceptable. We've had 25 years now of growing unemployment. Every single quarter we see the unemployment dropping down lower and lower. And it's sad. Because if I was in that boat, I think to myself, I'll be doing things that are ugly. And I don't want to say that, but that's what I'd be doing because you can't let your family starve. And this is what's happening. Families are starving.
It is definitely a crisis. Let me thank both of you for your time this morning and for weighing in on this discussion. A whole range of things come up when we talk minimum wage, the economy and the crisis we're facing insofar as the jobs numbers as well. Michael Bagram, let me thank you for your time, and Dr. Pali Lehohla, former Statistician-General.